Welcome to Replenish the Atmosphere of Discovery, where we discover the master's plan. Okay, today's session is on willpower. Today's session is on willpower. Okay, so willpower is not only your ability to control or restrain your actions, it is the strength within that pushes you, that drives you, that propels you, and motivates you. Okay, and what you allow to drive your willpower will determine your course of life. That whatever you allow to drive your will determine your successes and your failures. It will also determine where your reality is, right? So you don't want something driving your willpower into another reality that is not real. Okay, meaning that you are now operating in a world that isn't real with thoughts and feelings that are based on your made up ideas, your made up scenarios in your mind. Okay, but you were driven there to that place that is not reality by your own uncontrolled actions and emotions. Okay, so you do not want something driving your willpower because it determines your course of life. It determines your successes and your failures. It determines where your reality is. So you have to be careful about what affects you, right? What makes you feel out of control. And so that's why we limit what we say when we are emotional. We cannot speak with every emotion when we are not at peace. Okay. So today we will talk about emotions. We will talk about mental energy because it is directly related to the power of your will. Okay. Your emotions and your mental capacity, your mental energy, all of that is directly related to the power of your will. Okay. And so you may have the authority to control yourself, right? But not the willpower to see it through. Okay. Just because you have the authority to do something doesn't mean that's what you're going to do. Okay. You can have the authority as an adult, right? You're over 18. You can have the authority to do certain things as an adult. That doesn't mean you're going to always act like an adult, right? You can have authority in a leadership position. That doesn't mean you're going to always lead, right? It can't just be in words, it has to be in action. You have to obtain freedom in your willpower to be about what you are talking about. Okay, so willpower is not just your ability to control and restrain your actions. It is also the strength within that pushes you, that propels you, that motivates you to do great things, right? And so being timid and being fearful is a sneaky way that the enemy can get you to bow to his will, right? So he uses the power of your will when he is allowed to tempt you away from your created purpose, okay? So he keeps you from showing your gifts and your talents to the world so that God doesn't get the glory for what he created you to be and what he created you to accomplish, right? And so the enemy wants your willpower because it's a type of strength that is single-minded, that is focused, that is purposeful, right? And you need this strength to resist his temptations to obey God's will, right? So always use every opportunity that you have to let your light shine so that you can glorify God, right? Whether you're scared or not, no matter what your feelings are or not, you don't want your willpower to be driven by the one that is against you, right? By the one that is against you fulfilling your purpose in this life. Okay. So it takes mental strength. It takes mental strength to maintain the ability to resist even the smallest temptations, right? I know a lot of you can attest to this, right? Your mental energy levels determine the difficulty and whether you can remain strong enough to resist, right? And so it's helpful to express your thoughts and feelings about any tempting activity um, to someone else so that they can hold you accountable and tell you the truth. Not expressing this affects your mind, okay? And those tempting thoughts begin to repeat in your head, right? Draining even more of your strength to resist, okay? And so your willpower is also your readiness, your emotions, your drive, your go forth. right? So any one of these areas that is affected, it affects your ability to control or restrain yourself, right? If your emotions are affected, it affects your willpower. It affects your drive, right? It affects the thing that you need in you to go forward, to push forward. Okay. And so your ability to be disciplined, that is your willpower. Your ability to be disciplined, that is your willpower, right? And some of us are lacking in that area. Sometimes it's a physical issue. Sometimes it's a mental issue. Sometimes it's a spiritual issue. And then sometimes it's all three things. Okay. Your willpower can be affected mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. It can be affected. Okay. And so there's a chemical called dopamine in your brain, right? That teaches you what you want and then drives you to go get it. Okay. But if what you want is taught to you by the Spirit of God, then the chemical in your brain will drive you towards the positive vision of your life instead of towards self-destruction, right? And so I want you to understand that once you get what you want, some dopamine travels to where your memories are, okay, connecting your memory to your pleasure. Okay, so if the enemy can keep sinful desires in your memory connected to your pleasure, then this is what is called, this is what causes that insatiable greed, and it causes it chemically and spiritually. Okay, it is not just in the spiritual realm, right? That there's a chemical that God created in your brain for good, but if that is polluted, it will end up harming you. Okay, so in order to maintain self-control and resist temptation, start at the center of your desire. Okay, you have to reprogram your thought process, right? And train your brain to operate chemically under the authority of the life-giving Spirit of God. Okay, and so there are chemicals in our body that God created, right? Because He created us to help us complete certain tasks, right? It gives us drive and it fuels our spirit. Okay, He didn't just create these bodies the way that He did for nothing. Every atom, every cell was purposefully and wonderfully made to work together in order for us to complete our purpose here on the earth. Okay, so you need a steady supply of dopamine, a steady supply of dopamine, because it also fuels your motivation and your focus. But it's only beneficial if your motives are pure and your focus is on what benefits life. Okay. Surges of dopamine can be a problem because it causes addiction, because it's not a constant supply. And so telling yourself you won't do something, just telling yourself you won't do something, it won't change your brain chemistry, right? You have to stop stimulating that area that you're tempted in. Okay. You have to increase your steady supply of dopamine by finding pleasure in things that are good for you daily. Okay, instead of the tempting things that create surges that you can't control, right? So avoid the dopamine spike by maintaining a healthy daily supply constantly. You don't want the surges because that's what caused you to be addicted to the thing that you keep being tempted by, right? And so spiritually, this is why you feed yourself things that are morally good, things that are praiseworthy, things that are excellent, so that you receive pleasure from good things, right? So if you allow negative things to stimulate you or feed your spirit, right, it affects the chemicals in your brain. This body was created perfectly by God, okay? And so that is the chemical reason why you appear to be weak in your decision making. Okay, it's the reason why sometimes you lack determination, or why you stop resisting the temptations, or why you seek to self-sabotage. Okay. When you are learning, you have to learn to start resisting those short-term temptations in order to meet your long-term goals. Okay, that takes practice, right? And so you strengthen your willpower through practice. or self-discipline, okay? Self-care, self-awareness. This is how you strengthen your willpower. You train yourself by regularly practicing these things. You let it permeate in your spirit and in your soul so that it is a part of your daily life. That means you have that constant supply, okay? Self-confidence builds willpower, okay? That's why your lack of self-worth, your value, and other people's opinions, that's why those keep showing up, because it's tempting to drain the thing that builds you up, okay? So make sure your confidence remains in who God has created you to be, and make sure that it's not being polluted by prejudice or by, wanting to dominate other people, right? So your willpower makes your decisions. This is how whatever you agree to starts controlling your soul. It starts controlling your emotions, and then it starts controlling the way you act, and then it starts literally directing your life, okay? Your willpower is connected to your mind, even though it originates within your soul. Your willpower is connected to your mind, even though it originates within your soul, and it requires mental energy to survive, okay? That means you being stressed or overwhelmed depletes it, right? You being stressed and overwhelmed depletes your willpower. You don't feel like going anywhere. You don't feel like doing anything, right? This depletion causes you to give in to tempting things, such as these temporary pleasures, right? It tempts you to quit. It tempts you to be distracted, to lose focus, okay? When you are under a lot of stress and you lack self-discipline and self-control, it affects your mental energy levels, right? And your willpower needs that to survive, okay? Your self-care. A lot of time we focus on the outward things, okay? With self-care, we want to get the nails, the feet, the hair, the massages, all of these things, but it should include things that increase your mental energy, that builds up your spirit, right? And it doesn't take hours out of the day. You can start with 5 or 10 minutes of purposeful meditation to decrease your stress and to get rid of those subconscious energy wasters, right? And some energy wasters that we don't think about that drains us mentally is letting other people have power over your emotions, right? That this certain people, every time, certain person, every time you talk to them, you get depressed, or you get anxious, or you get angry, or you get sad. That's an energy waster. It drains you. It drains your willpower, okay? Low self-confidence or value, right? That takes energy. It takes energy to constantly put yourself down. It takes energy to stay down, right? Because you were created to be up, okay? Another energy waster, always trying to prove that you're right, right? That wastes time and energy. Just move on, right? Another energy waster, trying to remember everything instead of making a plan, instead of writing it down, instead of creating a to-do list. That drains your energy. Distractions drain your energy, right? Focusing on things you can't control. That's an energy waster. It wastes time and energy, right? And your willpower suffers because of that. Okay. Mental block, fogginess, having an unbalanced diet, lack of adequate sleep, lack of motivation, bad moods. This is a result of low mental energy. Okay. And they also drain what you have left. Okay. So it's a result of having low mental energy, and it also drains what you have left. And so you can't be productive when your mind is empty. Okay. When your spirit is empty, when your soul has holes that are not filled, you cannot be productive. Okay. Your willpower is depleted. And so your faith is an act of your will. If you lack willpower, you will lack faith. Okay. What you will to do is based on what you believe. So even if you direct your will in the wrong place, even if it's the wrong place, then that's the place that you will have your faith, right? So we have to make sure that we are centered and driven by the right thing, okay? If you lack the willpower, if you lack the drive to restrain yourself or push yourself, I want you to ask yourself these questions. What are you wasting your mental energy on? What is draining your spirit? Whatever's come to mind, if you're able to write it down, write it down. Okay. And then what do you do to fill that back up? Right? It's not going to fill up on its own. You have to do something. Right? Are you giving in to temptations that don't benefit you? Okay. Is that what your will is driven towards? That causes, are you giving in to the things that cause the chemical in your brain to assist you in sabotaging your growth and your forward movement? Are you helping it? Right? What is it that you believe in? Do you believe in God, but you don't believe what he created you to do? Right? You don't believe that he is powerful enough to put in you what is needed to sustain you to live out your purpose? Right? We believe in God. We believe there's a higher power, but sometimes we don't believe him about us. Right? We often think of only the spiritual side of things when we think about God, and we don't realize that he has literally physically and mentally set us up to prosper as well. It's not just for our spirit. We're supposed to prosper and be filled here as well in our body. We're supposed to be filled mentally. We're supposed to be filled emotionally. We're supposed to be whole, right? He created your mind, body, and soul, which should be submitted to your spirit, which should be submitted to his spirit, right? But what we will to do, what we use our willpower for, is the drive for the body and not the mind, or the drive for the mind and not the spirit. And all the different parts of us that God has created, our willpower should cause every one of those parts to do the will of God. Okay. Wherever there is an imbalance in that process, it throws off our destiny, right? And it doesn't just affect you mentally, it doesn't just affect you spiritually or emotionally, it also affects you physically. It also affects you financially, economically, right? You'll see that in all areas of your life until everything is back in balance. Okay? So, realign yourself back to God's original plan, back to his original design for you, okay? When you do that, your body will begin to heal because that's what he created it to do, right? If he didn't, we would still be bleeding from the scrapes we had when we were 2 or 3 years old, right? Our bones would still be broken if you've broken some bones. Our hearts would have stopped by now from all the pain that we've been in if God did not create this body to heal, right? Your mind will begin to be strengthened because your willpower will cause you to focus on what is necessary and what is beneficial for you. Okay. Your emotions will begin to be regulated and managed properly because your willpower will keep them from getting out of control. Right. Your spirit will be full because your willpower causes you to be disciplined in what you're allowing in. It will cause you to resist temptations, staying away from fear and worry and things that will not prosper you. Okay. So your will comes from your soul. It is what allows you to act in faith. Okay. And it needs to be strengthened with the right fuel to bring balance to all of your being. Okay. And that determines what you put out into this world. It determines how you affect and influence other people in your home, in your community. Okay. So, what is driving your will? Are you lacking willpower? And then the question is, what are you going to do to increase that? Okay. What is driving you? What is it that you believe? Yes, you believe in God. Okay. But do you believe God about you? right? We like to put a lot of things on God to do, but he created us in his image, right? With his spirit, if we so choose to accept it, to lead and guide us, not just spiritually. We're supposed to be whole in our physical bodies, in our minds, and our emotions as well. Okay. And when any of that is not in balance with the will of God, we will see that. We will see destruction in our mind. We will see destruction in our emotions. We will see the destruction in our bodies because every cell he created, every function, every process that he created in these bodies all operate with our spirit, with our mind, right? And so we have to be mindful that we're not just so focused on these external things, okay, that we can put into us, but what is that putting out, right? What is it putting out? Is it putting out a healed version of us? If it's not beneficial, right? Something negative may be driving our will, right? And so all of our will should be submitted to the power that we claim is all powerful. And if he's all powerful, and if you think about the processes and the functions of our bodies and our minds, right? He did that on purpose, okay? He did it on purpose for us to fulfill what it is that he called us to fulfill. All right, so I want you to be mindful of that. Be mindful of what is controlling your will. Be mindful of the things that are depleting it, that is causing you to be stagnant, causing you to lose focus, right? Be careful of those time wasters, those energy wasters, right? They drain you, wanting to be right all the time, the opinions of other people, focused on stuff you can't change, right? These drain your energy, right? And it doesn't just drain your energy for that specific situation, right? It drains you physically, it drains you financially, it drains you spiritually as well. It doesn't just stay in one area. Anything that's imbalanced, it will start to affect the other areas of your life. So I want you to be mindful of that. I want you to be mindful of the processes that God created in our bodies to heal us, right? To help us heal others. And don't just look at it as, sometimes we try to separate science, but I like science because science just proves God, right? It just proves how he masterfully equipped us, right, to do the things that he called us to do. And so let's realign ourselves back with the master's plan, how he designed us to be. Sometimes you have to tell your body, hey, I need you to line up. This is not what God created you to do. Now, you can't be doing the things that are overindulging and then telling your body to line up, because you need to get this to line up first, right? But sometimes you have to tell your body, no, I need this blood pressure to come down. If you know you're not doing anything, and sometimes we're not doing stuff like eating the wrong things, but we're allowing people to stress us out. You can't have both. You can't have the healing and the stress. You have to give up one, right? And a lot of times we want to keep both. You can't. Whatever is affecting your mind is affecting your body. And so you have to choose what you want. Do you want it to heal, or do you want to continue to be worried about that? Right? Do you want God to give you the resources and the things, the answers to your questions, or do you want to keep it? Do you want to do it your way? Right? And sometimes we want God to do it our way, but God knows our way is not going to solve the issue, right? And so when we're praying and asking God to do things, we have to be open to receive the way that it's going to be handled. Or we can keep going with our temporary solutions and have to keep coming back to him because our temporary solutions do not work. So what is affecting your willpower? What is affecting your drive? What is driving your willpower? Right? Should be God, right? If it's not, get back in alignment with his purpose, because it affects all parts of us. It don't just affect us spiritually, it affects us physically, it affects us mentally, it affects us emotionally, and ultimately it affects those that are around us, that we experience in this life. So that concludes our lesson for today. It was short, but I hope that it gave you insight on how God created us chemically to operate, as well as spiritually, and how those ways are connected. It's all for his purpose, right? And if we allow it to work the way it was created to work, we will live in harmony, we will live in peace, right? We were not put here to suffer. I don't know what this thing is that a lot of believers believe, that we can't live an abundant life. Jesus did enough suffering for us, right? He was whipped enough for us to have peace. And so you don't have to suffer. There's things that we cause upon ourselves because we get out of alignment sometimes, but a lot of the suffering that we've experienced, yes, God is going to use it. Yes, it's going to work for our good, but a lot of it we didn't have to go through, right? And so we have to get out of that mindset that we cannot have an abundant life, that we cannot be whole. We should be whole if our Father is the all consuming fire, if he's all powerful, right? And so a lot of times we talk ourselves into staying in bondage to make our minds make sense of continuing living that way, right? And I'm here to tell you that that's not the way that God wants you to live, right? He wants you to live in peace. He wants you to have harmony, not just spiritually, in every area of your life, okay? And so to God be the glory for that. I pray that you are receptive. I pray that even your mind processes is starting to think a different way now. You begin to realize who you are, what you were created to do, and everything that you were created to do is already set up for you, right? You just have to drive your will constantly, daily, in that direction. Keep that daily supply, right? And keep whatever you are desiring, or whatever that pleasure signal is, keep it on the right road, not the bad road that leads to destruction, right? It feels good for a moment. It feels good to give in to anger. It feels good to give in to whatever overwhelming emotion that you're feeling right now. But in the end, it's destruction. And it's not just destruction spiritually and mentally, it's also destruction physically. Okay. And so we want all of us, every part of our being, mind, body, soul, and spirit, to be in harmony, to be at peace, to be whole. Okay. And there's something we have to do about it. We can't just sit and call someone to pray, right? There's power in prayer, but there's something we have to do about what we're allowing to keep playing in our minds, what the places we keep going, the things we keep listening to. We have to do something about that, right? Because God gave us free will. So that means we have the freedom to drive our will whichever direction we want to. And he would love it if it would be driven towards his will, right? But he gives us the free choice to make that decision. And so realign. If you were turned a whole different direction, just turn back, come back, decide, I'm not going to do it this way anymore. And if you've been doing it that way a long time, it's going to be hard, but that's why you practice it every day. Steady supply, right? You practice it. You practice doing the things that are uplifting, that are beneficial to you, instead of turning to the things that are not, right? And it takes practice. And as you do it, day by day, your willpower gets stronger and stronger, and you go in the right direction, right? And then you will experience that wholeness in every area, right? Your mind, your body, your soul, and your spirit. We are all born with the will, and hopefully at salvation, you give up your will for his will. So yes, your will needs to be delivered, right? But we're all born with it. We're all born with the ability to make choices, right? And after living in the world, it's your willpower that decides to believe in the Lord Jesus, right? It's your will, your free will, your willpower, if you choosing to allow him to become Lord and master of your life. It's something that we are born with, but depending on our parents, that's why we're supposed to raise our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, so that their will is directed towards God and not towards, what they pick up from their friends or TV or what just naturally comes, right? According to your flesh, according to being born in sin, right? And so that's why we are to raise our children so that their will begins to line up with God. Otherwise, if we don't direct them, their will go another way. What becomes the issue is because a lot of people will is not involved when they confess Jesus. They don't really want to give up their will to him. They're just saying the words, or they want to get out of the situation they're in, but they're not willing to allow Jesus to become their savior, right? And so I think that's why we see quote unquote believers experiencing certain things, because their will is not fully transformed to the will of the Father, right? There's still a little part they want to keep of themselves where they do what they will to do, what they want to do, what's driving them. But when we turn to Christ, we have to let him drive, right? We have to, be driven by his spirit. And a lot of people don't. They think they can do both, but you can't do both, right? Whoever you obey, that's who your master is. If you obey your flesh, that's who your master is. If you obey Satan, that's who your master is, right? And then we say we love God and we don't obey him. But he said, those that love me, obey me. And so all of that is based on what you will to do, right? Is it your will, not your mouth, not your mind? Is it your will to allow God to be your Lord, to be your master, right? And we want him to be savior and don't want him to be master. We want him to save us from what we feeling and the situations, but we don't want him to be master. And we think about Psalms 23, when it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Well, he has to be your shepherd in order for you not to want, in order for you to lay down in green pastures, in order for him to restore your soul, in order for his goodness and mercy to chase you, he has to be your shepherd. But we quote all of the other stuff, but that very first line, the Lord is my shepherd, is what gets us everything else in the rest of the verses. And so if we love him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we love our neighbor as ourselves, we fulfill everything else, right? And so loving God with all of that includes our will. Our soul includes our will. And so our soul has to love him. And I think a lot of times we love God the way people love us, right? We don't love him the way he loves us, or the way he wants us to love him, right? We leave a little piece for other things, for what we want. We need our will to receive salvation, to confess it truly the way the word tells us to confess it, believing it in our heart. We need our will. And when we say that confession, we have to be willing to give up our will for his will. And I don't think a lot of people do that when they confess that. Our will has to be delivered into the will of God. If you confess Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, but you didn't even understand that you had to give your will to him, that you had to make him your Lord and Master, take this opportunity right now to decide, do I give up everything for his will to be fulfilled? Do I give up my fears? Do I give up all of the horrible things that I don't understand that has happened to me? Do I give up my emotions? right? Do I give up all of these things for his will to be done? Now, his will is perfect. His will is that you prosper. His will is that you have peace. His will is that you be whole, right? But in order to do that, you have to follow him, right? So if there's something that's not causing you peace and he tells you no, you can't have that, you have to say, not my will, but your will be done. Okay. So you want to be saved, but he not only saves us from calamity and pestilence and all of this, he saves us from ourselves. And that's the hardest thing, I think, to be saved from, because we want what we want, but you have to trust that he knows what's best, right? And if you want him to be Lord, that is a great place to be, right? Because he not only saves you from everything, he also saves you from the inside stuff as well. And so I want to commission you all that you search your hearts and you see that if there's anything in there that has more of your heart than God. Is there anything in your mind that has more of your mind than God, that has more of your spirit than God, right? And we have to love him with all of our being, right? We have to submit to his perfect will for our lives. And if you've been out of his will, make the decision. It's according to your will, right? What do you want to be driven by? All of creation works according to his will, right? Except us. We're the ones that have free will. So the trees, the oxygen, how the sun rises and sets, all of this stuff works according to his will, right? And we're the ones that kind of come in and mess up his will. Our bodies work according to his will until we start doing stuff with it, right? So just think about it. Just think about yourself as a tree, right? The tree's going to grow. As long as nothing cuts it down or stops it, it's going to continue to grow and be whatever it was planted to be. What are you planted to be? And choose to say, I'm going to grow however he wants me to grow, right? That's how you submit your will to him. Okay, just yes, 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 yes. And as you say yes, you grow, 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 right? Yes to his will. Even, with your feelings, even with your emotions, even with things that happen in your life. Yes, yes, yes to your will. Because some things that happen to you are not his will, right? But you're around people that open doors to different things that you're not aware of. But if we ask him, what's your will? We'll be in the right place, right? So hopefully you all will begin to challenge that, what is driving your will, and begin to realign yourself back to the master's plan and will for your life so that you can start experiencing some wholeness in your life, okay? In your mind, body, soul, and spirit. So I pray that you all have a good weekend. Rest up, relax, no stress, no fears, no worries. Stop thinking about stuff you can't control. Okay, that's wasting your mental energy. You're not going to want to get up and do nothing after you sitting there just thinking, thinking, thinking. So have a prosperous weekend and God bless everyone.